Take a look at the best records in the American League since the trade deadline. Mariners with the best record in the AL, 11-6. Seattle a game and a half behind the Astros, tied for the wild card with the Yankees and the Red Sox right now. Front Office Insights presented by Sage. We welcome in the president of baseball operations for the Seattle Mariners, Jerry Dipoto. Jerry, it's Brian Kenny. You're in Philadelphia. Thanks for waking up early. You got the workout in and you're ready to go. Thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to do it.
What is it like? I want to ask you, how is the pennant race on you? It seems tense. You're a game and a half out. Astros look slightly vulnerable. You're in there tied with the Yankees and the Red Sox. What's your day-to-day life and pressure like?
I said yesterday in a private conversation, this is just that time of year. If you just break the season into thirds, we're in that final third, where as a front office group, we don't really have any ability to contribute like I feel like we do in the first 2/3 of the season. Now we're just fans, riding the wave with the guys and trusting what they'll do and rooting for them. But it's I guess it is somewhat tense, but that's the American League this year.
So do you watch pitch by pitch? I know you were at the game last night, but or do you do Billy Beane style? You just go get your workout while they're playing, and because you can't affect the outcome, or do you watch?
I know we can't affect the outcome. I'm gonna watch every pitch. I've never been able to do the Billy thing, and I worked with Kevin Towers for a year in Arizona, and he told me he never saw Trevor Hoffman actually throw a pitch, and I thought that's crazy. But I love watching it, and I ride it up and down with the guys. Baseball's a hard game, and you just try to be there and support how you can, and pat somebody on the back when it's going bad, and walk on by when it's going good.
You were aggressive at the trade deadline. Give me your trade deadline philosophy this year.
This year we leaned in a little bit more to the players who would be pending free agents. We just felt like this class of available players at the deadline had what we need in pending free agents. We addressed the infield corners. We did add to our bullpen. We wanted a second lefty down there to join Gabe Spire. And we thought the best players for us just happened to be, I guess what you would call rentals. And, we're hopeful that we knew Gino coming in. He fit our clubhouse perfectly. Josh Naylor had an intensity that we've been trying to attract for a number of years, him specifically. And we were willing to give up some of our future to make it happen for this roster now.
Just looking at the numbers from Eugenio Suarez now after a torrid start has not been good for you. We were just talking about Kyle Tucker of the Cubs. And, even Craig Counsell's like, he doesn't have answers. We haven't had answers for him. What is the state of the art in, as we call it, labbing a guy up? Meaning, hey, you're clearly not at your normal levels. Let's get into biomechanics, coaching, etc. When do you apply that? When do you back away?
The off season, the early spring is when we really lean into, the labbing a player up, doing what we can to help him with the movements. I think once the season starts, and Gino's a great example of it, I think the Diamondbacks, Gino, their hitting people did a wonderful job of making adjustments that freed him up to have the kind of impact he's had over the last, we'll call it, season and a half. And, inevitably, once a baseball season starts, it's a little tougher to do that and ask for big physical changes. And baseball is just a series of streaks. And we've been with Gino for long enough to know that when the hot streak comes, he's the type of offensive performer that can carry you.
So at what point do you approach a guy? Or do you say, we know he's struggling, we back away? What do you do? How do you know?
The hitting coaches are psychologists more than they are mechanical adjusters within a season. And we do interval visits with our players. We have what we call our player plans, and we'll sit with our players on a monthly basis to review the progress they're making on the individual goals that we set for them. And they're usually process oriented. And if we see something that's lacking in process, we can refocus the dials from a pitch selection perspective, from a scouting perspective. But making too many physical adjustments within a season is really hard to do while you're expecting a player to go out and attack it. But you can talk to a player at the end of a season about setting up a program to develop, a physical change during the off season when you've got a little bit more time to spend cleanly in a lab.
Okay, fair enough. Cal Raleigh, you extended him before the season. He went from very good player to a guy being a fantastic player. Did you see something that said breakout offensively with him?
I said this to Cal in a visit this past offseason. He's just gotten a little bit better with each passing year, and he's at that age and stage in his career with the experience of a young veteran. This is when players typically pop, when they're 27, 28, 29 years old, and you'll see them reach the apex of what they're capable of. And right now it's just happening for Cal. And I wish I could have told you that our forecast had this in the cards. We're just riding it. It's the summer of Cal, and we're glad to be along for the ride.
What do we not see that brings him value? Because he's kind of back into the MVP race. Being a catcher, there's all sorts of things he can affect the game with. What are you seeing that maybe a fan isn't seeing, the media is not seeing, stats aren't bringing out?
His stability, the leadership that he provides in the clubhouse, the stability in what he provides our team. He's been, so consistent over the course of the season in terms of his performance. A little dip around the All-Star break, and he's gotten it going here as we've been on this tough road trip. But Cal brings humility. He brings a focus on the game. Every night he shows up, first one to the ballpark, first one to go through the scouting information, first one into the door to sit down and go through a pitcher's game plan. And as you know, it's not just the offense. I believe he's going to set an all-time record for home runs for a catcher. He's got a chance to do things that no catcher has ever done. And still the focus that he brings every day on attending to the pitcher's needs, knowing who's up in what pocket for the bullpen, what the right pitch sequencing might be, the little game within a game that's so critical for a catcher, which is why you don't see these type of offensive seasons from catchers very often.
Right. It's more demanding than ever. Julio Rodriguez, his numbers now are good. Defensive metrics are fantastic. But again, a lot was expected. Where is he in his state of development, in his progress as a major leaguer?
Julio's still figuring out his road. And I was talking about it today with another member of our group at the gym. we have such high expectations, not just us, but the baseball world at large for what Julio will be. He's 24 years old. And I believe over the course of the last, 4 years since he's been a major leaguer, he's one of the 10 most valuable players in the league by FWAR. And it's hard to be better than that, but he finds a way each year to throw it into a new gear, usually around the second half. And, what we'd love to help him do is get, off of the starting block, a little quicker than he has in years past. But this is the time of year where Julio has historically thrived, and he's doing it again. The week before the All-Star game, he took a little bit of a break, stepped back, viewed his season, and came out charging. And his enthusiasm, the way he's embraced the attention in the second half, it's less of a burden, the expectation, and more of a let me show you what I can do. And I think he's been at his very best for most of the last 2 months, really.
All right. Exciting times for your club. I'm glad you're watching it pitch by pitch. It'll be a wear on you a little bit, but a good place to be. Jerry, always a pleasure having you on the program. Thanks so much for coming back on, and best of luck down the stretch.
Thanks, PK. Always enjoy it.